Call this meeting to order. At this time, everybody stand for the invocation and then the pledges.
Thank you, Mayor. Let's pray. Father, thank you for the foresight and the vision you have given us for our future, and especially thank you for the excellent team that you have blessed us to accomplish these goals. And Father, we pray for your vision, guidance, and grace as we make big decisions this quarter, and may our move of faith pay large dividends for our future. In Jesus' name, amen.
Raise the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I am the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one indivisible. Thank you. Citizens' comments. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Comments about any of the council agenda items are appreciated by the council and may be taken into consideration at this time or during that agenda item. Council is prohibited from acting or discussing items brought before them at this time. And I believe we have one person on the line, and that is Charlie Locke. Mr. Locke? Please state your name and your address for the records, please. And you have 3 minutes.
Locke, and my residence is Dallas, Texas, 13627 Peyton Drive, Dallas, 75240.
Go ahead.
Just continue? Okay. Thank you. Well, first of all, thank you for letting me speak for a few minutes. Some of you may have seen our restaurant. It's located over on North Corinth, 1400 in the, what's that shopping center called here? Pinnell Square Shopping Center, called Miss Lively's Cajun Kitchen. And we just moved over here recently. That's Kevin Lively. I'm a partner of his. And we moved here recently from Hickory Creek and in Dallas. And we've had a 60 to 70% decrease in business since we've been in this location, and we're puzzled. And so the reason I approach you guys tonight and ask you to think and help come up with some ideas for maybe us getting more traffic and visibility at that location. There's another restaurant in that same shopping area, just 3 doors down from us, called Bella Macca. It's Italian, very good Italian. And they're suffering from lack of business as well. And in both of these locations where we are and where Bella Macca was, there were 2 other businesses there for many, many years. But we're like I said, business has dropped 60 to 70%. And the building itself is beautiful. The restaurant is just gorgeous. The food is good. So we're doing all the right things. But we've got to get some better visibility, whether that be by some recognition in signage or billboards or something. So we're proposing that the city just give this some thought and maybe come up with some ideas that could help us to stay there. We want to stay in Corinth, but we don't. Our business does not indicate that it's profitable for us to stay there. And we've invested a lot of money in this location and the community. You know, we've had people ask us to come to this community. So unless you have any questions for me, I don't know anything else that I want to say. We would really appreciate you giving this some consideration. And drive by and come by to eat, too. Kevin, anything from you?
Yeah, if I could add just one thing, too, that is that I am the business owner, and Charles is my dear friend and business partner. And I am in the streets in this community every single day. I work 7 days a week, and I'm very aware of everything that is going on. Hickory Creek came to me and asked me about moving over there where those 3 new restaurants have built right on the edge of 35. And at any given time, if you drive by there lunch or you drive by there tonight, last night, tomorrow night, 7 days a week, we see that those parking lots are packed to capacity. And it's like I was sharing with another council member that isn't here tonight. I'm sure she's on Zoom, Tina Henderson, when I spoke to her today. those are not all Hickory Creek customers. Those are not all Hickory Creek residents. And so my petition with Charles is if we can come together and find a way to get those residents that are leaving out of Corinth to go have lunch and dinner, what can we do to encourage that traffic to stay right here? It's going to help my business here in Corinth. It's going to help the tax dollars for Corinth. And it's not that my food has decreased in value. It's not the building that we're in is
Really
much
nice.
more superb from where I was at in Lake Dallas. But as I stand before you tonight, I can tell you that for many, many weeks, that my sales in this brand new location is down consistently, daily and weekly and monthly, 60 to 70% in sales. And I think that if there is anything that we can collectively do to try to combat that, I'm all for listening to it. I'm all for being a part of it. I have reached out to the actual landlord with Pinnell Square, and we're going to just keep plugging along. I want to stay there, but it's a situation to where that I cannot continue.
Can't put more money into it.
I can't continue to put more money into something that is not going to give a return. And to be honest, it's just been shocking to me that coming from Lake Dallas, a mile and a half, 2 miles away, to a much more nicer neighborhood, in my opinion. The homes and everything around us are just, I was in a falling down mobile home. And it was a great 3-year run, or I would have never had the opportunity to bring and do what I'm doing here in Corinth, to bring it 2 miles. And so I'm asking that let's put our heads together. Let's come up with something. If you're traveling down 35 and you look to the right, what you see in those buildings, the only thing that really stands out is a big sign that says gymnastics. Pinnell Square offers a lot more than just gymnastics. And so I don't know. I don't really know what the sign ordinances are. I don't know what we can do, what we can't do. But I know we've got to do something to be able to keep that business afloat at 1400 North Corinth Street. And so that's what I'm asking you guys is, what can we do? One of the main draws of me coming over here was I know about the build out and everything that's happening from Corinth Parkway over to Corinth Street and everything on the service road. And that's all fine, well, and good. It's fabulous. I'm excited about it. I just want to be able to get to that and stay there to get to that point. I work 7 days a week. Hard work does not bother me. But when you put your labors in and you spent the marketing dollars that I've spent, several $1,000s over 4 years to grow my business through social media, through Murray Media, through the Go pages, different things like that, sponsoring softball teams, sponsoring, city events, Pumpkin Palooza. I've done lots of things, and I will continue to be a part of any and everything that I can be a part of to grow the name of my business. But at this point, we're hidden. There's not a tremendous amount of traffic down that street. I have put up the signs. We've got lights that we've put all around the building. We decorated with green, gold, and purple for Christmas. And that I did it on purpose, green, gold, and purple, so that it would carry me into this Mardi Gras season. We're fortunate enough this year we get a longer Mardi Gras season than normal, with Fat Tuesday being on March 1st. And I have activities planned and different things to promote Mardi Gras. I've been on the back page of the Lake Cities Living magazine with a big Mardi Gras ad. I'm in that magazine every week. We've got bands promoted. We've got all sorts of things that are planned. But we are not getting the foot traffic to that location.
Or drive-by, really.
That we need. So I don't know what we can do. You guys are a lot more in the know of what we could possibly do than, say, I am. I'm new here to this city. I know my hands were tied many times in Lake Dallas with signage more than I was told what I can't do, more than I was told what I could do. However, with that being said, at the end of a neighborhood at the lake, a mile from 35, driving through a school district, through a neighborhood, to a falling down mobile home, my business was much more financially, dollars coming in the door, than it is to this much, much nicer building that we're in.
We've gone way over, and we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thank you for the insight.
How about having lunch or dinner?
We will. Okay, consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted in one motion. Should the mayor or council member desire discussion of any item, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. I entertain a motion on the consent agenda.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote.
I'm not seeing where to. Oh, hold on. Move. I'm sorry, I'm not seeing where to vote.
Okay.
How to vote?
What's your vote? Can you just cast your vote?
Yes.
Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you. Item I, conduct a public hearing to consider testimony and take action on a proposed amendment to the city's Unified Development Code, Section 4, Sign and Fence Screening Regulation, Subsection 4.02.11, Screening Requirements for Residential and Non-Residential Properties, Subsection 4.02.11, C.1, Non-residential construction abuts residential zoning classification. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, I'd like to have our planning manager, Michelle Mixel, to lay out this item for you. And this is for a public hearing only and no action to be taken.
Thank you, Council. I know this topic, again, is quite exciting, and you've been waiting for this after your 2 workshops that were held in October consecutively, and then we went on to hold a workshop with Planning and Zoning Commission. What's not listed here, we also held a public hearing with them last month, December 13th. We discussed the merits at the workshop of considering the amendment that would permit some flexibility or alternative compliance design options to the strict requirement of this masonry screening wall where it abuts a non-residential abuts a residential zoning classification. And if you would recall, during our workshop sessions, the design alternatives to the masonry screening, you thought that they would be appropriate for us to consider alternatives based on the character of a property, whether you are unique site conflicts, based on the intensity of the non-residential use, and where it's perhaps not the best practice to require a masonry wall given the uniqueness of the situation of the proposed design. We also talked during the workshops that alternative options might be opaque it's hard to speak with this on, vegetative screens, a living screen, of berms, a combination of masonry wall or decorative metal with a vegetative screen. We talked about while vegetative screen might require maintenance, it's typically less expensive to install and provides perhaps a more appealing screen. We also talked about no screening options, considering the uniqueness of an area, such as what might occur with Agora, where the interconnectivity of uses and walkability may be impeded by the strict requirement of installing these walls or any screening for that matter. We examined and discussed that currently the only option unless you're in a PD where you might have the option to request a departure. The only option is currently when a residential zone abuts a non-residential construction is a masonry wall. And these are some examples. We looked at the possibility of an opaque living screen. We discussed the different levels of opacity. We talked about there might be options for more of a natural screen based on the uniqueness of the situation, or perhaps something more manicured, more formal. And then we discussed perhaps no screening. And this is just an example of a not neo-traditional, it's an actual traditional development pattern that I took from the University of Denison University in Ohio, in Granville, Ohio. And then closer to home, there's an example here in Carrollton where might be more similar to what we have, where we have some single-family detached homes with an alley access. Under our current ordinance, it would require a wall between non-residential structures, but perhaps we thought if this is in an urban area, maybe no screening wall at all, and rather the treed landscape buffer that we require, which would be 2 rows of staggered trees 50 feet on center, which would create a continuous canopy, and then perhaps some ornamental plantings or low hedgerows and so forth, separating the uses visually, but would allow for connectivity might be more appropriate. So this is just giving an example. And then we talked about, at the workshops and at public hearing with P&Z, adding language to specifically offer a design alternative, and it would be considered under our existing alternative compliance evaluation criteria. That we would permit this option citywide, and the applicant would have the burden of demonstrating why the alternative would result in a better design option. And then we talked about the ability to establish a level of opacity as a condition of alternative compliance. Rather than necessarily requiring the applicant to come before council every time, we discussed that perhaps doing this at a staff level, with affording the planning and development director the discretion to defer to council for consideration or approval, but doing this at the staff level. And of course, the applicant would have the ability to appeal the decision by staff to P&Z and to council ultimately. Alternative design options would be based on best practice. The opacity would be determined at the time of design, considering the unique situation. Some other creative options that a landscape architect might come up with, and then again the no screening option. But it must be justified based on fostering interconnectivity between uses and the walkability, such as the sense of place that might be desired with the agora or similar transit-oriented development designs. We also added in this into the draft ordinance that's contained in your packet that a registered landscape architect would be required to do the graphic representation. That there would need to be a justification, a narrative establishing the basis for the evaluation criteria, and it would be the burden of the applicant to outline this. And then we would also like to have a typical elevation view, of the proposed alternative, so we can understand graphically what that would look like. Oops. Okay, this is supposed to say public notice, just to let you know that we did formally publish this in the Denton Record Chronicle on Saturday, November 20th. And we're letting you know here that the Planning and Zoning Commission did hold a public hearing on December 13th, 2021, to receive public comment. We had no public comment at that time. And that they recommended this item for your consideration 5-0 for City Council approval. There's the public notice. Okay. And any questions?
Council have any questions? Tina, Kelly?
I don't. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. And at this time, I'm going to open this for a public hearing. Is there anybody online that would want to speak to this issue? No? Okay. then what I will do is we will continue this public hearing until the February 3rd meeting, council meeting at 7 p.m. Is that correct? We're continuing.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. Very good. Business agenda. Consider an act on a memorandum of understanding between the City of Corinth and iChooser LLC for the purpose of providing homeowners of Corinth with group purchasing power in the procurement of a high-quality residential solar PV system installation, including financing options and authorizing the city manager to execute the necessary documents. Mr. Hart.
Mayor and Council, you have in your packet an MOU between the city and iChooser to allow them to offer the program for solar panels within the community. We would be one of the early adopters here, be kind of a pilot across the state and the country in doing this. We do not generate any revenue from it, nor does it cost us any money. But it's simply here as a offering to residents to help them if they're interested in having solar panels on their home. And so we're bringing this memorandum of understanding to you with the recommendation that we do enter into the agreement.
Is there any question from council? If not, I entertain a motion on this item.
Mayor, I would move that we approve this item as presented.
I'll second.
Any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Thank you. Item number 5, consider an act on an interlocal agreement with Lake Dallas, Hickory Creek, and Shady Shores for legal services to prepare a contract and franchise agreement for the broadband initiative, with Corinth managing the legal services agreement in an amount not to exceed $27,000. Mr. Hart.
Yes, Mayor and Council, this is related to our broadband work that we've been doing. The four managers, or the managers of the 4 cities, worked with Patricia, identifying Carl Kaduch to serve as our attorney in the negotiations of the service agreement. He has experience in doing these similar types of agreements. 1 and 2, I've worked with the FCC, so he's quite knowledgeable, and his sole practice is around broadband related issues. So the 4 managers all agreed that that's who we wanted to work with. Patricia's office helped with that in terms of getting an engagement letter from him. And then we used as a template the same interlocal agreement that we've used for both Mighty Rivers and Marketplace.City and the other 2 interlocal approaches that we've done. Shady Shores approved the interlocal agreement on Monday of this week. We had circulated it to the 4 cities and received a number of changes from Lake Dallas yesterday. But my recommendation would be that we would go ahead and stay with the interlocal agreement that you approved. 1 is because Shady Shores has already acted upon it. Hickory Creek will be considering it next week. Then we're going to have the 4 cities coming together to determine whether or not to award an agreement. And then Lake Dallas will consider this ILA on January the 27th, so the day after we vote. What's important from my perspective is that we go ahead and engage Mr. Kadanch for the legal work, get the retainer paid so he can begin some of the preliminary work between now and January the 26th, and also so he'll participate in the meeting and be available for questions from the 4 cities. And Patricia, I'm going to pass it to you for any comments on that as well.
As it's currently structured, the actual engagement letter with Mr. Kandouche will be signed off by all the cities. So we have this interlocal just to kind of determine who's paying what percentage and the services that are going to be provided, of the services being provided. However, we have an engagement letter from Mr. Kandouche, which is fairly a standard attorney engagement letter, and all the cities would be signing off on that. I think there was, yesterday, the comments received from Lake Dallas were some concern over potential for individual members to have contact with Mr. Kandouche, and I think, that could be worked out if that's the case, but the purpose of this ILA is collectively what are we doing under one umbrella to deal with and get expert attorney services for broadband. So the others may want to explore other options for their own, get a different attorney to avoid any type of conflict situation with Mr. Kandouche. But the objective of the ILA that's in front of the council tonight would be to retain Mr. Kandouche to provide collective legal advice and services in the best interest of all the 4 Lake cities.
Are there any other questions on this item?
I have one, Mayor. So I'm confused if Lake Dallas wants some things changed, but we go ahead and approve it. Obviously, they're not going to approve it as it is. So does that mean we're come back to the drawing table again? Or does that mean we just move on with this attorney and then they do something different? I'm wondering why we're approving this if we already know that there's some changes and that they're not going to approve it like it is.
Well, let me get the first half of this, and then Patricia, you can respond. Part of the issue is we're trying to get the attorney under engagement, and I'd like to get it done with at least 1 or 2 of the Lake cities. If we approve the changes like Lake Dallas wants, then Shady Shores is going to have to go back and do that at their next meeting, which will be in February. And what's important from our standpoint is that we get the engagement letter signed, have at least 2 cities, preferably 3, signed on before the January 26th meeting. So the issue here is the timing. Lake Dallas is not going to meet until the 27th, and I'm not 100% convinced they're even going to approve the proceed with broadband. So I really would hate to see us hold this up because we really want to get him started on some work next week in terms of preparing the initial template and working with the recommended ISP.
Okay, and if I can add, I spoke with the Lake Dallas attorney yesterday, Kevin Laughlin, and he provided his comments. I incorporated those back into the document and sent that back over to him to show him. I didn't have any major issues with any of them, but since then, it came to my attention that there are additional concerns. So it was very apparent that we weren't going to be able to get all those worked out before our meeting tonight. So certainly the ILA can always be amended, but right now we have 1 city that's approved it in 1 form. We have that form submitted to the Corinth City Council this evening, and then we have proposed changes that haven't been wholly signed off on by Lake Dallas. So I'm not comfortable with approving that. I don't want to make them angry because I did make the changes yesterday and have not gotten them, to say, yes, we're good with all these changes, or we want more. So I think, we've got this deadline pending because we're trying to get Mr. Kandouche engaged so we can keep moving forward. We can certainly come back and amend the ILA to take in other considerations from Lake Dallas or Shady Shores after they look at Lake Dallas's changes. But, it sounds to me from my conversations with Bob that we're trying to get this done so that we can have this by the 26th and get started on that process. So, again, you can always make changes to these agreements, but we now have one that's been approved in this form. It's in front of you for approval in this form tonight. So I don't have buy-off from the changes, even though I accepted the ones they had yesterday. But I did put a couple of comments in there because there was concern about how do we control costs if we're sharing the cost, yet one member maybe has a lot of questions because that's going to run it up for everybody. So those are a couple of issues, the open issues that need to be hammered out. But I don't think that the ILA is just really an overarching type, this is how we're going to share costs. And again, I don't disagree that there are other issues to be worked out if members want to make individual contact with Mr. Kandouche, but there's also a conflict potential for Mr. Kandouche because he's going to represent the whole group. I did add liaison language as was requested and was put in the red line from Mr. Laughlin and from Lake Dallas. So I hope that at least that point is better. I haven't spoken to him today to know whether he's better with that or not.
So what I'm hearing is even if we approve it, even if it's not approved by all 4 cities, we can still move forward. That was my concern, that if it wasn't approved by all 4, we couldn't move forward, but it sounds like we can.
Yes, we can move forward, and what we need, from my perspective, what we need is action from you tonight, so we can move forward this next week. You're the key player in all of this.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions, comments? Okay, I'd entertain a motion on this item.
Mr. Mayor, I approve the ILA between Lake Cities and Kandouche Law Firm for broadband negotiations, contract documents, and franchise agreements.
I second.
Is there any further discussion? Cast your vote. It's unanimous. Council's comment and future agenda items. The purpose of this section is to allow each council member the opportunity to provide general updates and or comments to fellow council members, the public, and or staff on any issues or future events. Also, in accordance with Section 30.085 of the Code of Ordinances, at this time, any council member may direct that an item be added as a business item to any future agenda. Mr. Burke.
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Mr. Garber?
Nothing, sir. Thank you.
Mr. Holsworth?
Nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
Mrs. Henderson?
Yes, sir, I do. I wanted to say Mr. Lively had called me today almost in desperation. And I had asked him, I said, you need to come, talk to the council. And I would like for us to take this serious because as we move forward and try to develop our new center in Corinth, we need to show that we have some restaurants that are making it and that are doing well. So I just would like to ask that we do take this serious and see if, I don't know if we can do anything or not, but if we can, it would be good.
Thank you. Mrs. Pickens?
I have nothing. Thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Hart?
Nothing other than, if I can respond to Tina, Elise went by both restaurants today and was in both Keith and Walter were not at the restaurant today when she went by about 1:15. So we'll continue to follow up with that and bring back some ideas.
Okay. I just have one comment about, I attended the broadband meeting last night and got an overview of what that committee has been working on. They've done a fantastic job of getting a lot of loose ends pulled together, and I look forward to the 26th where everybody will get to see the same venue that we saw last night, and I think you'll be impressed with the work that the city managers have done and the committee as far as getting this thing prepared for the citizens, because as you remember, one of the biggest things we uncovered in our surveys was people wanted broadband and how can we get it. And when you listen to this presentation on the 26th, you're going to see that you're going to get a lot of broadband at a very reasonable cost. And with that, we're adjourned.